Hey everybody, I'm Eric Hagan from the SAP Process Automation team, and today I want to talk to you about one of the most common types of processes we see, the exception handling process. If your organization is like, well, everybody's, you're constantly fighting against that infamous Pareto principle, this notion that 80% of your effort is only resulting in about 20% of the value. So what we're going to do today is show you how you can use the low-code, no-code capabilities of SAP Process Automation to automate some of these steps. And you'll be able to, what?
Can I go to Jimmy's house tonight after the movie?
I'm doing a thing. How late are you going to be out?
Like 1,
One?
2.
Did you do your homework?
It's summer, Dad.
Oh, good point. Did you do your chores?
Yes.
Did you do your practicing?
I always do my practice.
I don't know. I'm kind of busy. Just go ask Mom.
She told me to ask you.
Oh, fine. Just don't wake me up when you get home. I'm going to be asleep. Teenagers, oh my gosh, I've got 3 of them. And they're always interrupting when I'm trying to get stuff done with some super time-sensitive, critical ask that I've got to respond to immediately. And look, it's not like rocket science. We're not super strict. They know the rules. If they've done their chores, they're helping around the house, they're doing good at school, we pretty much let them get away with everything. I really wish there was a way to automate parenting. Wait, light bulb. Hold on one second. I'll be right back.
Okay, everybody, I'm back, and I've just modeled a process that's going to dramatically streamline this curfew exception request problem that I keep having all the time. The first thing I needed to do was create some way for the teenager to initiate this exception request. So that's this initial step right here. If you click on it, you can see a forms editor pop up. This is my curfew extension request form that I created. I didn't have to code anything, just by dragging and dropping them. In our case, obviously, we want the kid to specify who they are, so we're using a drop-down control. They can specify the date when they want this exception to take place, the new time that they're requesting, or alternatively, they can request an extension just in a number of hours. And they need to specify a reason code. So we gave them some pre-configured values that they need to choose from. The other thing we want them to do is provide a textual justification, a business justification, if you will, on why this request should be approved. We also wanted to put some additional information for their knowledge. So this is our initial request form that the kid needs to fill out. When they actually get the URL, it's going to look something like this. So this is the form they'll fill out on their mobile device. And as soon as they hit submit down here, once they've supplied all of the necessary information, then the process will really get started. Okay, now that the form's been filled out, the next phase of this process is really about data gathering. And that's where this child detail lookup comes in. Now, just to give you some background, my wife is pretty good about keeping track of the things that we tend to measure our children by. So I'm giving the children a chore score, a practicing score, and because I made the process, I added my own factor, which is the kid on my good list. Now, this is a very sophisticated algorithm where I take a 4-week trailing average of their other scores, which I'm going to use in the process to help determine whether or not they deserve a curfew extension. The problem is all of this data is in a spreadsheet and I want to use it in my process. So I'm going to use an automation to automatically go reach into the spreadsheet and it'll give me all of the relevant decisions. So this is a bot that I created. Now you'll notice these tasks have a concept of an input and an output. In this case, I'm going to give it the email ID of the person who started the request. If you click on this, there's really good assistance on the different types of elements that are known to the process that are acceptable in this field. I'm going to go ahead and take the name of the kid, and the output of this is going to be a record with information about the kid. Now, how is that bot going to do it? Well, let's take a quick look. So essentially what we've done is we've trained this bot to actually go and open my Excel file for me on my computer. It's going to look into that Excel file and it automatically is going to map the data that it finds in the Excel file with my record in the process. Now, all I have to do is essentially parse through that file. And this is where this little conditional logic comes into play. It's going to parse through that file, go through all the children until it finds the child that matches. And then we're going to go ahead and output all of the information from that Excel file in the appropriate process variable. So now I'm back at the process. If you'll notice, the output of this bot is a record with all of this information about my child. I'm going to use my first decision gate here to perform a specific test. And if this test passes, I'm just going to go ahead and just approve automatically this request. It's not worth any more additional time. What test am I going to perform? Well, is the kid currently my favorite? So this is a conditional step where I'm able to specify a particular condition using, again, data from the process itself. In this case, it's going to be really simple. I'm I'm just going to look up who is initiating this request. And if that person happens to be Clara, I'm going to go ahead and say that this gate is true, and we'll follow the true path, which you'll notice this line up here is just going to skip everything and go all the way to curfew approval notification. You know, we say we don't play favorite with our kids, but what can I say? She follows orders and always makes me cookies. If the test fails, we're going to follow this default path, which is going to go to this next phase of the process. The other thing that we look at is how well they're doing at school. This data we don't track independently. It's in an external system. There's no API I could call for the school portal, but I can have a bot do it for me. Once I have the GPA, the next step in this process is to determine which parent is going to approve the request. I'm using the business rule capability of SAP Process Automation. It's got inputs, it's got outputs. We're going to input information about the child, and we're going to output a record. And this record is a custom process variable, which has 3 pieces of information: the role of the person who's going to perform the approval, an email address for that person, and then I've actually added another flag: is mom veto eligible? And we'll show you how that's used in a second. These process variables, you can find them over here. I've actually created a number of them. They're just data types that follow the process. You can fill out and use as part of the process as necessary. So let's take a look at these business rules. What I'm going to do is I'm essentially going to pick the input and then the data that I'm going to use as an output of the decision. In my case, I'm using a decision table, which contains all of the possible outcomes that I'm looking at. The engine is going to look at these inputs: the age of the child, how good they've done on their chores, how good they've done on their practicing, whether or not they're dad's favorite. And then what we're going to output is, again, a record, which is going to contain these values. The goal of all of this is to determine who is actually going to approve the process. So I've just executed this activity. So now I can again use one of these decision gateways to change the flow based on the outputs of my decision table. So in this case, I want to determine, does dad get to approve this or not? And it's a really simple condition. Is the result of that role field that I just determined in the past example equal to dad? Then this is going to evaluate to true, and dad is going to be able to do a approval. If not, it's got to go to mom. So let's say I get to approve it. The next thing is going to happen is a approval task, and that's going to be modeled as a form that I will fill out if I get a approval request task. So I've just received a curfew extension form. If I decide to approve it, it's going to follow one path. If I reject it, we're just going to go straight to the curfew rejection notice. Mom doesn't even need to look at these. But if I do approve it, however, again, we've got another condition gateway. So I'm just going to check to see if mom also needs to approve this. If that's the case, then we're going to follow that path. So again, I'm looking at a process variable that I defined earlier. If mom is veto eligible is true, this condition is going to be true, and she's also going to get a task. Otherwise, it's just going to go straight to the approval. I'm not going to pull up the mom role task because it's essentially identical. I can reuse these forms to create additional tasks. So now we're getting to the end. If we've made it this far in the process, one of 2 things is going to happen. Either the extension has been approved or it's been rejected. If it's been approved, again, another task will happen, again with the form. Child will receive a congratulations, their extension has been approved. All of this is obviously read-only. We don't want them going in and changing after the fact the values. This is the congratulatory option. The other, if I go back to the workflow, is the rejection notice, unfortunately, which similar to the approval, different copy, different information, and then either way, the process ends. Now all I have to do is make this process available. I'm going to first release it. The process becomes read-only, and then the next step is to deploy it. Once it's deployed to the tenant, I can start using the process. And you'll see I've got a few other versions that are released and deployed. So this is the current process that is actually deployed, process version 121. You'll notice if I click on this initiation task, there's a form link. This is a URL that I can use and bookmark on my kids' phones so that they can use that link to initiate new requests. And again, this is the link that they'll receive and be able to fill out. I'm going to go do some process governance and let the kids know how the new standard operating procedures of our house are going to work, and I'll let you know how it goes. Thanks again for listening.
Hey everybody, thanks for taking the time to watch this video. I know this may seem like a trivial example, curfew extensions, but the reality is we see these kinds of patterns everywhere in all kinds of exception handling workflows across all lines of business. Hopefully this gave you some ideas on how you can use SAP Process Automation. If you want to learn more about SAP Process Automation or get started, feel free to follow the links that follow. Thanks a lot.
Dad, why didn't you let me stay up late after my friend's party?
Well, I don't know. What did your curfew extension request rejection note say?
I have a recital in the morning.
Well, you have a recital in the morning. You can't stay up late. You have a recital in the morning, obviously.
But you always let Clara stay up late. Why can't you let me stay up late for once?
Okay, first of all, that's not true, and I can prove it. Here, take a look at this dashboard. This tracks all of the instances of the curfew extension requests, and you can clearly see that many of the ones initiated by Clara are getting rejected, and many of the ones initiated by you are getting approved. So what's the problem? Yeah, nice try. Stay tuned. I think the next iteration of this is going to be the curfew extension request rejection appeal workflow. Stay tuned for that.